Thank everybody. Thank you for coming to the Jerusalem Press Club. Please, this is a good reminder to turn off your iPhones or switch them to silent mode. I'm Rhodes. I'm the Director General of the Jerusalem Press Club. Welcome everybody. I want to thank my able staff for facilitating this event, and very pleased to host this morning Professor Eytan Gilboa. You all received his CV, so I'm giving only the highlights, okay, with your permission. Professor Gilboa is Professor of International Communication and Director of the Center for International Communication at Bar-Ilan University. Since 2005, he's also visiting Professor of Public Diplomacy at USC, University of Southern California. He's the Chair of the Israel Communication Association, received his PhD from Harvard University, has been visiting professor in many universities in Europe and in the States and elsewhere.
That's enough.
That's enough. That's enough. We invited Professor Gilboa to speak about the Trump administration in Israel, but with your permission, we'll add the Obama and Trump administrations in Israel following Friday's event. We usually recommend like 20-minute presentation, then Q&A. Without further ado, Professor Gilboa, please.
Thank you very much, Uri. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you some of my views. And I will focus on the UN Security Council resolution on Friday. I'll talk about what happened, why it happened, what are the ramifications of the resolution, and what we can expect in the future, especially from the Trump administration. A number of precedents this resolution has created in American politics, in American-Israeli relations, in American-Palestinian relations, American-Egyptian relations, a bunch of precedents. The number one precedent is in American politics. Usually in transition periods, outgoing presidents are not supposed to make any significant changes in American foreign policy or conduct new initiatives. So the Obama's decision to abstain is an aberration, and probably the first time, I think, in the history of transitions. And this is even more striking because the elect president, Donald Trump, made known his opposition to the Obama's decision. 88 senators out of 100 wrote a letter to Obama telling him to veto the resolution. So this is a very unusual situation and an interesting precedent for the future. Another precedent, I think, and this is highly problematic, the language that Prime Minister Netanyahu used to criticize the resolution and personally President Obama. The kind of language is really almost unprecedented. We know that from the beginning of their tenure, the White House and in Jerusalem. And incidentally, this is also unusual. Never in the history of American-Israeli relations we had the same president and the same prime minister serving at the same time. You would recall that Obama started his presidency on January 20, 2009. This was January. In February, Netanyahu was elected. So never in the history of the relations of the two countries there was a continuity of this kind. And when you have good relations, it's good. When you have bad relations, and even a deteriorating relations from the beginning, it's not so good. So So this is the kind of response that I think Netanyahu enacted is unprecedented. No Israeli prime minister criticized an American president that way. If you talk about ambush and shameful ambush, I don't know all the story behind it, but it's possible that the whole event was orchestrated by the United States, by Obama and Kerry themselves, in collaboration with other members of the Security Council and the Palestinians. It's possible, we would not know, but this is what Netanyahu has accused them of doing. So the second point, I think, which is interesting, is this. The resolution itself is obviously highly problematic for Israel, and I think the Palestinians formulated this decision in a highly sophisticated way. Settlements has always been the soft belly of Israel, and when you focus just on the settlements, especially during this time, then obviously you had a better chance of convincing members of the Security Council and also the Obama administration to support your initiative. So I think it's a huge success for Palestinian strategy and diplomacy, and I think this is where the resolution is problematic, because in my judgment, I'm not a politician, I'm a scholar, but I'm telling you that, that this resolution is not going to help negotiations, because in my judgment, it will only reinforce Palestinian rejectionism of negotiations with Israel. This is a logical conclusion. If you can get what you want without making any concessions, then why would you negotiate? And this has been a problem from the beginning of the Obama administration, because even from the beginning of his term, he focused on settlements. And he was seen by the Palestinians as someone who can deliver Israel. Delivery of Israel means that you can obtain concessions from Israel without reciprocal concessions that on the other side. And Obama was probably the best president for the Palestinians. And still he was unable to move negotiations. In fact, what happened is exactly the opposite. If we look at his presidency, the least scope of negotiations between Israeli and Palestinians occurred during his terms. The fewer meetings, fewer negotiations than compared to earlier administrations. So I think that this resolution is not going to help negotiations. It could jeopardize Israel, both economically and diplomatically, because of that unprecedented separation between Israel within the Green Line and the territories and the settlements. The U.S. position from 1967 on has been that the United States opposed the settlements from the beginning. But the United States also said that negotiations should be held directly between the sides, and that there should not be international forcing of negotiations and agreements. So this was always a game between rejection of settlements and at the same time rejection of UN imposed conditions and restrictions on the sides. And during the Obama years, so there were a number of instances where this dilemma was decided in favor of a veto. So in 2011, the Obama administration vetoed a very similar resolution. And in 1914, the Palestinians and the Arabs have been raising this resolution almost every year or so. So 2011, the Obama administration decided to veto the resolution. Now 2014, there was another attempt. It was not even discussed at the United Nations. And so now the United States was behind it. I want to say that this 14-0 result is a little bit misleading because there were a number of states at the Security Council who looked at the United States and decided to vote for because of the American position. If the American position would have been different, their votes would have been different. And how do I know that? Because this came out in talks and negotiations between the Netanyahu government and representatives of those countries. So Japan is one example, Uruguay is another example, Angola, so these three for sure, the Ukraine, so you have a number of countries that would have voted otherwise. So this is a little bit misleading to say, okay, it's the whole world. It's like 14-0 and 1 abstention from the United States. The other point that I want to say is that why then the United States changed its position? So we have a number of explanations. One is simply personal revenge, especially for the bad relations between the two leaders and especially Netanyahu's speech in Congress against the nuclear deal with Iran. I think this is too simplistic. It may have contributed to the decision, but it is too simplistic. I think that Obama was worried about a number of things. Number one, Trump's victory. And Trump made a few statements about Israel in general, Israeli-Palestinian negotiations in particular, and even more particular about the settlements. Trump said, I don't care about the settlements. I'm not going to impose a solution. Obama deserted Israel, and I'm going to change that. Then there were talks about moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And then you appoint David Friedman, a supporter of the settlements, to the next US ambassador in Israel. And then there was the Amona crisis. And then you have the regularization law. So Obama was very concerned about the direction that will develop after Trump takes office. This explains why he took that extreme position of changing American foreign policy in a transition period. And they read all kinds of reports from Israel, ministers saying that it's about time to annex at least Territory C. You have a combination of factors here. So I think that there's a contribution here of Israeli behavior to the Obama's decision to abstain from the vote. Now, the next issue that I think has to be discussed is the ramifications of it, and I have to note that there is a consensus in Israel, in all of the political parties except Meretz and the Arab List, that the resolution is bad. Yes, the opposition, Yair Lapid and Herzog, they criticized Netanyahu for not doing all kinds of things to prevent that result. But everybody agrees that this is not a good decision. So this is something that has to be taken into account. The next thing is, I guess, what we can expect in the future. And here there are all kinds of things. Obviously, the resolution is going to be there. And it's quite possible that the Palestinians are going to maximize its effect by going to the criminal court in The Hague. Although I must say, as a scholar of international relations, this resolution by the United Nations saying that, for example, the settlements are illegal, it is something that the Security Council is not supposed to make, because the Security Council of the United Nations is a political body. This is a political decision, and no political bodies can make illegal statements. They cannot. So one has to make a distinction here between legal and political decisions. It was a political, not a legal decision. And the whole thing will be clarified and disputed. And I'm also sure that even the criminal court in The Hague would even discuss it because of all kinds of problems, legal problems. But nevertheless, I think it will strengthen the BDS movement in the United States and Europe. Countries may demand now marking of goods from the settlements. There could be all kinds of other complications. Companies, banks, companies may be warned that they violate this UN resolution if they deal with the West Bank, with the settlements. So there's a potential here for all kinds of problems. What Netanyahu wants to do, obviously, in my judgment, what should not be done, and again, I'm doing political analysis, I don't want to convey my political views, but I can tell that what is being recommended by the right here to annex sea, etc., I don't think this is good, because it could justify the resolution and make things even more complicated. So this is what not to do. Well, beyond that, I think Avigdor Lieberman has suggested a very good idea, which, in my judgment, if had been accepted at the time, it might even change Obama's views. Avigdor Lieberman suggested that Israel and the United States agree on construction only in the big blocks and in Jerusalem, and that even the Palestinians agree would remain in Israeli hands, because we're talking about territorial changes. So he suggested that, and it didn't work. So, but this could be an idea for an agreement with the Trump administration. Now, what could happen in the United States? This is also quite interesting. My view is that, first of all, historically, incoming presidents always like to change existing policies or policies of their predecessors. This is especially true when a Republican president replaces a Democratic president. This is especially true when you talk about someone like Trump. So his tendency would be to completely change Obama's both domestic and foreign policies. Domestic, for example, the healthcare legislation, I think he's going to change that. And I think that he is going to change Obama's policy on the Middle East in general and American-Israeli relations in particular. So this is just a general observation. What else could be done? Netanyahu said that he expects to work with the incoming administration and Israel friends in Congress to minimize the damage of the resolution. And I think this is a key statement, because this is exactly what he wants to accomplish. Now, what the president can do, for example, on January 20, after 12 o'clock, for example, he can say, well, you know, what Obama said, and there are other things that I'm going to refer to in a minute, what Obama said does not represent American foreign policy. Now I'm the president, and my policy is exactly the opposite of his. Number two, he can cut aid to the Palestinians, $400 million a year. Nobody knows where it goes. And he can say, I'm going to freeze that. If you Palestinians are continuing to do what you are doing, you will not see American money. Congress can do other things which are quite interesting. Congress has an agenda of itself. Now, Congress is being ruled by the Republicans, but as I mentioned earlier, many Democrats criticized Obama and opposed his policy. The number one person to oppose his policy is Chuck Schumer, a senator from New York, who is going to be the minority leader in the Chuck Schumer is going to be, and I want to remind you that Chuck Schumer was one of the few senators, Democratic senators, who said he would vote against the Iran nuclear deal if that deal would be discussed in Congress. It was not discussed. It was not approved by Congress. So Congress can do all kinds of things. Congress can make a law saying that the United States supports direct negotiations and opposes any imposition of conditions on the sides, which is going to completely negate the resolution. Congress can cut funding for the UN. Lindsey Graham, who is a senator from West Virginia, says he's responsible for money to the United Nations. Comes out all the time. It happened before the US cut funding for UNESCO, and UNESCO suffered from that. The United States funds about 25% of the United Nations. Trump has severely criticized the UN during the campaign. Maybe Congress would take a measure like that. And also Congress can legislate against any American company or any company working in America, a foreign company, against complying with the UN resolution. So Congress can say, oh, if you are going to follow the UN resolution, we are going to take you to court and you're going to pay a huge fine for that. Now, this happened before. More than 25 states in the United States have now laws that prohibit the BDS movement. So maybe this could become also a federal thing. Now, maybe the last point that I want to mention is this. This is about the transfer of the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Turns out that this is a serious matter. I need to remind you that in 1995, Congress made a law of Jerusalem, required the president to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem every 6 months. The president signs a letter telling Congress, I respect your legislation, but for national security reasons, I cannot do that. This is back in 1995. So obviously, if Trump were to ask for advice from the State Department, from US embassies around the world, maybe from the Middle East, the Department of State, he would get, oh, if you move your embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, then there's going to be a lot of violence, a lot of opposition against the United States in the Arab world and the Muslim world. But as Trump is, he may do just that and still transfer the embassy to Jerusalem. There are all kinds of talks about a visit of him in Jerusalem, maybe one first visit, overseas visit. And this is quite interesting in my judgment because Obama made his first visits to Turkey. This was in February 2009 to Ankara. And he was so impressed and praised Erdogan. And then he went to Egypt in June 2009, and then he didn't come to Israel until his second term. So I told you again, Trump would like to do exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. So maybe his first visit is going to be to Israel. He is going to maybe going to Jerusalem and say, I'm going to transfer the embassy. And if he were to do that, again, this is going to be a major blow for the Palestinians. On the other hand, in my judgment, what Trump will be doing in foreign policy is a lot of business type negotiations. So in my judgment, what he could do is this. He can tell the Palestinians, look, I want to end the conflict. And he said, I want to end the conflict. Now, I'm moving the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now it's your choice. If I don't do it, I want you to begin negotiations without any preconditions now. And if you are not ready, so I'm going to transfer the embassy. Why am I suspecting that? Because, and I'll mention to you the One China policy. One China policy which goes back to Richard Nixon. You know, One China policy is Taiwan. He got a phone call from the president of Taiwan, and he answered.
He didn't know.
He answered the phone.
He didn't know.
I didn't agree with this. You see, this is the thing. I don't think he's that stupid, as many people are telling us that he is very stupid, doesn't know anything. What he said is very simple. First of all, someone is congratulating me. Why should I not respond to that? This is number one. Number two, but this is a little bit pretending. What he's saying is that he told China, I have many problems with you. You want me to continue with One China policy? Fine. Let's talk about your currency policy, about the trade deficit, about your aggression in the South China Sea. Let's negotiate. Fine. But I'm not committed to anything, and he's not committed to anything. So what we can see from him in the next few weeks or month would be quite interesting in trying all kinds of new things in the world, and especially about the Middle East, perhaps. Now, maybe last point is this. I think what we have seen in the last 2 days is a lot of hysteria and panic at the Prime Minister's office, which I don't think is justified. I don't think that this is a huge disaster, but I don't think that the left here, especially the extreme left or the Palestinians, should be that joyful. Because I think that we have to put everything in context and perspective. I'm criticizing Netanyahu's punishments, like canceling visits of the Foreign Minister of Senegal and the Prime Minister of the Ukraine, and calling back ambassadors from Israel. I don't think these are good measures. Yeah, I can understand where it comes from, but I think that Israeli policy has to be much more sophisticated. And I think one of the main thing would be to rethink what to do about the territories. I think this law of regularization has to be buried, because this is like a red cloth, and I think that there is an urgent need for collaboration between the United States and Israel. One last point on what to do next. One other point is what's quite interesting for me, who the White House sent to defend the American position. His name is Ben Rhodes. Now, Ben Rhodes is the most unreliable person you can find in Washington.
That's.
And why am I saying that? Because of his own admission. He gave a major interview. I don't know if you have seen it. I've seen this interview, May 6, 2016. He gave an interview to the New York Times, who wrote a big article about him, where he said how he manipulated, how he lied, how he fooled journalists in Washington about the Iran nuclear deal. So when he talks, I don't believe a word he said. And when he was asked whether or not it was Obama's revenge, he said, no, we just care about Israel. And then he said, when Trump said things are going to be different on January 20, he said, yes, but the president now is Obama until January 20. What Trump said? Trump said, after January 20, things are going to be different. So what kind of response was that? It was a very stupid response. Oh, I have one other thing that I want to say.
Please do.
One final thing. And this is about the next few weeks. I think this is not the end of the story. There are two problems here, which I think could emerge. First of all, John Kerry has his own account to settle with Netanyahu. So he's going to make a speech this week about the Obama's vision of Israeli-Palestinian peace. Again, this is something unusual, very unusual. Again, I'm talking about transition. You don't do things like that in a transition period. Now, what could happen is that somebody at the Security Council will pick up this plan, will say, okay, this is a good plan, why don't we make it a UN Security resolution, UN Security Council resolution? And the second thing, which is quite interesting, France is having another second meeting of foreign ministers, about 44 ministers, about the French conference idea on January 15, 5 days before the transition at the White House. And Kerry said he is going to come. This is really, if they were to do these kind of things, it will really not only create a storm in American politics, because as I said, already the resolution, the Obama's decision about the UN Security Council resolution is violating American principles of transition. Transition is supposed to be technical. That's it. Yes, you are the president until January 20, but somebody else has been elected president. And you are supposed to only technically transfer the transition, because transition is so complicated, it takes a few months. But you are a late duck president, you are not supposed to do this kind of things. So I think that if they were to make this speech and go to France and say, we support this, support that, in 5 days, the US policy is going to be exactly the opposite of what you are saying. So you are confusing the whole world about it. Because what is American foreign policy? In transition time, you do not make American foreign policy, because it is transition time. Okay, I think this would be enough, I guess.
Quite an animated talk for a scholar. Okay, thank you very much. Let's open up, Hannah, please.
Yes, Professor Gilboa, it's a pleasure to listen to you now, 30 years after I studied with you in university.
I was better then, I think.
But this is more interesting, you know, with touch of politics. I wonder, how would you summarize the attitude of Obama administration towards Israel before this resolution? Because we know, of course, of the bad chemistry with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the strong criticism against him. On the other side, on the other hand, he vetoed until now all the resolutions or the proposals against Israel.
No,
would you say? Not all.
Only one veto. There was only one veto resolution in 2011.
11. Okay. How would you summarize his policy, his attitude until 2334?
Okay. I need to say something here which I think maybe I should clarify that, because it's very difficult to really say that at this time. But it's also possible, it is also possible that Obama really cares about the future of Israel. And that his motivation, according to his principles and his worldview, is that, I hate this term, which was invented back in the 60s and 70s, was I think 70s, was George Bull, Undersecretary of State.
Save Israel.
Save Israel from itself. He wrote a big article, Save Israel of itself. But maybe this played some role in his evaluation of what is happening and what he needs to do. So there were huge disagreements between Obama and Netanyahu especially on the Iran issue, Iran nuclear program, Iran nuclear deal, about Israeli-Palestinian negotiations, because, and I have to remind you that, Obama applied pressure on Netanyahu to do two things. One is to declare support for the two states for two peoples solution. And I say two peoples because the Palestinians say only about two states, not two peoples. And also, he forced him to freeze settlements for a year, 10 months. And Obama accepted that. Nothing happened.
Bibi accepted it.
Bibi accepted it. Nothing happened. So from the beginning, there was a problem here. He was the only Middle Eastern leader to accept that. Now, so obviously, there are all kinds of things here. The disagreements. I think this invitation to go to Congress by the Republicans to speak against the nuclear deal, this was also unprecedented. This is something that really, really added another layer of poison, personal poison, because like Obama has been so frustrated by the Republicans in Congress. And here leaders of the Republicans are inviting Netanyahu to speak against the nuclear deal without even consulting with the president. I think this was a major issue that, and I've written about it, but I don't have time to
Maybe
talk.
you send them a link. If anybody is interested,
No, but this is history already. This is
I'm sure you have it in your files.
I have it, yeah. So I think that, so from the beginning there were all kinds of problems. My analysis, and I've written about it as well, is Obama decided from the beginning that his main goal is to achieve reconciliation between the United States and the Muslim and the Arab world. This is why he went to Ankara, this is why he went to Egypt. And he thought, and I have some evidence to prove that, he thought that distancing the United States from Israel will help him to accomplish that goal. Now, one other thing I want to say is that, so Netanyahu felt Obama is abandoning Israel. So not now, not yesterday and the day before yesterday, but at the beginning of his term. The second thing is about military support, and I think that I've heard that yesterday, even Ben Rhodes said it, we have just approved $38 billion to Israel. Now, one has to clarify this, I think. Number one, yes, I think this is a huge agreement about military aid, but I don't think this is like the United States is doing a favor to Israel. This is not aid. In my book, this is not aid. This is an investment, and there is a big difference between investment and aid. The United States is giving aid to the Palestinians. Don't expect anything back. But the United States is getting a lot of stuff from Israel. And Ben Rhodes said, we gave Israel $38 billion, and at the same time, this is like a present, like we are giving you a present. But at the same time, he said, and he didn't even notice, he's so stupid, he didn't even notice that in his own statement, he's undermining this claim by saying, we had excellent intelligence collaboration, and there is intelligence sharing, development of, joint development of weapons like the Arrow, and the United States may need Arrow in the future, and military doctrines, proven military doctrines, fighting terrorism. The United States gets a lot of stuff in return. So this is not like a simple aid, but that this we have to say that during the 8 years of the Obama administration, despite all the diplomatic and the political disagreements, Obama didn't touch the security and the military high levels of collaboration between the two sides. The motivation is not philanthropy. The motivation is interest and reciprocity. But we need just to put this record, straight record. Yes.
Okay, next. Yes, please.
Is this attempt by Obama and Kerry to do this last-minute political thing, is this an effort to internationalize the conflict in such a way that no future U.S. administration can easily make changes? That's my first question. And the second
Let's
question...
take one at a time.
I think I've answered that already by saying that, yes, I think this was a major change in American foreign policy. And what you are saying just now, it's an excellent demonstration of that. Because the United States has always opposed internationalization of the conflict. And the United States did it for two reasons. One, because this is obviously not a favorable forum for negotiations. And second, the United States wanted to be the leading mediator in negotiations. So when Obama is now internationalizing the conflict, it's exactly the opposite of American foreign policy since the beginning of the conflict, maybe. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that yes, I think that this was Obama's purpose, to tie the hands of President Trump.
Okay,
But it's very limited. This is what I'm saying. I've said earlier, it's limited because Trump can make all kinds of moves which I have explained earlier, with Congress. Congress is very pro-Israel, very Republican. Also, Democrats are going to participate in this to do exactly the opposite, to reduce the internationalization of the conflict. And I've written about it as well, saying that if the Palestinians were smart, they would have now acknowledged the Trump presidency and seek ways to use his ideas and his approach to conduct negotiations. But Abba Eban said many years ago, the Palestinians have never missed an opportunity. They missed an opportunity to negotiate. So if they continue like this, I think this is going to make a huge confrontation between Trump and the Palestinians. And I think the $400 million are in danger. And I think that one has also to remember other actors in the Middle East. You know why Egypt withdrew the resolution? Huh? You know that?
Why tell us?
Trump called him.
Because Trump told Egypt, if you do not forget about reconciliation. Trump wants to restore relations with Egypt, Sisi, because Obama did exactly the opposite. Again, if you want to see what Trump is going to do, take Obama, turn it around. Completely around. On many issues, not on all issues, but in many issues. So I think that we'll see what kind of relations Trump is going to create with Egypt. There's a lot of expectations. Maybe too high expectations for major changes in foreign policy, in Trump's foreign policy, but this remains to be seen.
Follow up quick.
224 and 338 showed that this was disputed territory legally. Does this 2334 now supersede that and make it occupied territory?
That's a
It's
good question.
Legal question. No?
No, this is exactly the kind of argument that I mentioned earlier. I'm not an expert in international law, but I know something about international relations, and all those resolutions are not legal. They are political resolutions, and political resolutions may be changed. So the immediate answer to you, it's not a legal thing; it's a political thing. Yes, I think that from now on, if they say 242, 338, and what is it,
2334, replacing.
If they put it together, they contradict each other. So this is going to be, but I would not be surprised, yes, because I think the UN does so many absurd things that I would not be surprised. But I think I oppose the use of legal legal concepts in those resolutions because they are not legal. So, but I think if they say, all right, all settlements in the West Bank are illegal, this is not a body that is supposed to be ruling legal matters at all. This is a view, but it's not a legal matter. And I think it would be quite interesting to see if an international, I think we have enough lawyers, good lawyers. I would take Alan Dershowitz. If there's a problem, I think, in the future, I would take Alan Dershowitz and some other significant, I think I spoke with Alan Dershowitz about it. He said, there's no case for international forums. But the problem is that all of these, remember there's a wall, security fence. There was a decision about it. There was one American abstention at the time, or American opposition. The judge said this is all a political farce. So who knows? It could continue as a political farce. The combination here of legal and political ideas is confusing.
Walter. By the way, Walter is probably the oldest acting broadcaster in the world. and we just approached the Guinness World of Records to recommend him for this. So we are very honored to have you here.
In our terms, it's called the Dean of Journalists.
They called me on the program the doyen of the airwaves.
Doyen.
That's a term.
Doyen of the airwaves. That's a good word.
You mentioned before the red line speech that Netanyahu made at the UN and at the invitation of the Republicans. Do you think that he knew that there was no consultation and that the president was not, or that the president was not consulted? And if he had known it, would he have gone?
Okay, this is a tricky question. I think my belief is, and again, I have personal knowledge about it. I cannot say more than that, but I can tell you that
Why not?
Netanyahu. In the meantime, it's classified. Maybe I'll write about it. But I can tell you, Netanyahu was absolutely sure that he has enough votes in the Senate to prevent that agreement from happening. And he did not correctly assess the possibility, and this is what exactly happened, that Obama said Congress will discuss the deal, and then he negated on it. And again, he said, "Oh, okay. Now I don't ask Congress to approve the deal. I know about American politics enough to argue that he violated the American Constitution, because the American Constitution makes a distinction between treaties and agreements. Treaties are significant agreements. This was a significant agreement because Obama himself said this is an historical agreement. If this is a historical agreement, it has to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate. And it was not even discussed in the Senate. So I think Netanyahu made a huge mistake here by thinking that he can force opposition, can force this cancellation of that deal. So, and it will be quite interesting. I want to tell you that Trump, on January 21, can cancel the deal. Cancel the deal. He himself. Just one signature, because Congress did not approve this deal. It was not an official document of the United States. Whether he will do it or not, he said he will. I'm not so sure, but this is besides the point. So I think that for all kinds of reasons, I think Netanyahu made a mistake, and I think he made another mistake because he thought he was talking for months now about potential Obama's ambush. It was not a diplomatic surprise. Everybody was surprised. It was not supposed to be a diplomatic surprise.
He himself said that he foresaw it.
That's right. But he behaved as if it was a diplomatic surprise. And maybe he thought that, 3 weeks, as I said, it's not acceptable for an outgoing president to do anything like that. So maybe he thought, okay, now we are only 3 weeks before inauguration. So maybe Obama
Won't do it.
would not. But then, so I think there are all kinds of problems in evaluation of American foreign policy, especially during the Obama years.
Yes, please.
Yes. If and when Trump does drastically shift from Obama's policies, how can that, what ramifications will that have as far as the stability of this region?
Stability.
Yeah. How will a quick turn of the dime, what specific areas will that affect?
I don't know of any effective way to stabilize this region. You have to be a magician if you talk about stabilization. But obviously what I'm hearing from all kinds of sources, and this is something that I have opposed many years, the thinking that this is the most important conflict, and you can still hear it in Europe. Some of us who visit Europe all the time, this is the most important conflict in the Middle East. If this conflict is resolved, Israeli-Palestinian, this conflict is resolved, this area is going to be paradise, it's going to end all conflicts in the region. Suddenly Iran will be a peaceful state. This is sheer nonsense. And from the beginning it was sheer nonsense. And Obama attempted to do this kind of linkage. So I think that what to do about the Middle East in general is a huge challenge for Trump. I can only say that since I believe in his business approach to international relations, he wants, and he said so, I want deals. Israeli-Palestinian, deal. Putin, deal. American allies, like those which have military agreements with the United States, such as Japan, Korea, I want to negotiate everything. I want to open all American trade agreements. So he's a businessman. His approach is he's not a politician. He's a businessman. So one option is a deal with Russia. Now for Russia, Europe and the Ukraine are much more important. So he may tell Putin, okay, let's make a deal. I'll give you what you want in the Ukraine, you give me what I want in the Middle East. So this could work in favor of Israel. But if Putin would manipulate him, then Russia would get what it wants in both places. And it happened to Trump in the past. So the question is, and I think this is my view, I think he selected Rex Tillerson to be his Secretary of State because he wants a businessman as a Secretary of State and not somebody like Kerry, who has been probably one of the worst American Secretaries of State. He wants a businessman to conduct business and international relations. The most important thing for him is the American economy. And for the American economy, he is ready to confront China and to do a deal with Russia.
But he has to have a political assistant.
The what?
Tillerson has to have an assistant who is a politician to
Yes.
advise him on the political aspects of it.
Maybe Rhodes. No, I'm joking. Yes, please.
America always refers to democracy. How do you see the system when it's the dictatorship for 2 months in America and Congress or other fields don't have a word to say in what's going on? And I remember in March of this year, when Senator Graham came here, we discussed and I asked him what would happen if these 2 months, what could happen? He said, yes, we have, I am responsible in Congress of what he said also yesterday about the budget for United Nations, we would react, but apparently no way to react for until next month.
Oh, wait. I think, first of all, we are going to have a new Congress. Republicans still control both houses. The majorities were a little bit shrinked, 52 to 48 in the Senate. The Democrats made a huge mistake 2 years ago because they changed the percentages for appointment of like senior officials. Like I heard especially from J Street. J Street wants to prevent the appointment of David Friedman to ambassador. No way. I tell you why. And this is a stupid thing that the Democrats did, because for cabinet level appointment ministers, it used to be 60%. Why 60%? Because of the Senate. Why 60% of the Senate? Because this is the percentage required to stop filibuster. By filibuster, you can prevent appointments. So 60%. So people say, if you have 60%, no filibuster, that's the end of it. Now, Democrats, because they lost control of Congress, decided 2 years ago that a simple majority is enough. So 51, 52%, everything is appointed. So there's no choice, there's no chance whatsoever for anybody to prevent David Friedman from becoming the next president. And I don't like him.
Ambassador.
Ambassador. What do you say? President.
You said president. Small thing.
Okay.
Yes, please. Over there. No, wait. Anybody?
Anybody else?
Hannah, please.
Okay. To what extent do you think part of the responsibility for today's turmoil in the Middle East, without forgetting, of course, the internal dynamics in Islam, the different branches and terror and all that, is attributed or should be attributed to Obama's mistakes?
Okay, this is a huge, another huge question. You have me only for 1 hour. But this is an interesting question. In my judgment, it goes back. I think the United States.
Summarize the question, please.
The question is how much responsibility Obama has for the upheaval, for the present upheaval in the Middle East. And my answer is yes. There is some responsibility, and I think this responsibility goes back to what I said earlier about the way he approached the Arab world and the Muslim world, and I think to some extent his decisions to withdraw from Iraq and from Afghanistan. What you heard all the time is withdrawal, and you heard so. I wrote a piece, and the title was Obama resigned from the world policeman position. And Ben Rhodes, who said leadership
Not him again. What do you have with
No,
him?
because he said this leadership from behind. When he spoke about Libya and NATO intervention in Libya, he said the United States is now functioning like leadership from behind. There's no such thing, leadership from behind. Either you lead or you are behind.
Same with Syria.
The same Syria. And I think this, so you see all kinds of steps here that I think much of the problems and the instability come from the region itself. But I think external intervention, make things worse to some extent. So I think the Russian intervention in Syria and the American lack of intervention, I think, had a huge influence about what happened in the region. And it remains to be seen how Trump is going to deal with it, because no easy solutions. And you cannot use nuclear weapons against the Islamic State or against the Syrian army.
Okay, we have a strict 1 hour rule and we stick to it. I want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I'd like to give you a token of our appreciation, membership card of the Jerusalem Press Club. Now you're really a serious scholar. Now, thank you, Professor Gilboa.
No, thank you very much.
And thank you for coming.
And I'm here. If you want to talk to me privately, fine. I'll be happy to
Thank
answer
you very
your
much.
questions. Thank you.